Wherever possible, I try and think about how I can automate a particular process or automate a task inside of a business. In the early days of Zoom2U, as it was growing, one of the things, the challenges that we had is that we had to grow a large number of drivers in a very short period of time. We won a big client, they wanted to access a large pool of drivers, and we didn't have the pool of drivers at that point in time. So we were manually sort of onboarding drivers. We would go through a process where they'd apply, someone would actually call them, they'd speak to them, and often they would actually come into the office, we'd meet through them, and then actually go through the process of collecting ID information, driver's license, insurance, and all that sort of stuff. It was very, very manual. And so what I realized that we couldn't actually scale the business without actually automating this whole process. So we built an onboarding function, and we got our team of developers together, and we actually figured out and mapped out, okay, this is what's going to be the most efficient way to actually onboard drivers. And what were the roadblocks? One of the roadblocks was around meeting drivers, and that was a really time-consuming process for the driver, but also for us, and how could we actually eliminate that process? So we built this form, drivers filled out that form, we actually captured a video, and the video was very useful in allowing us to actually see how that driver actually communicated. And based on that communication, we would then determine whether we wanted to onboard someone onto the platform. The next thing we did is we actually made the rest of the onboarding process purposely complicated. We purposely made it complicated so that we could identify drivers that could follow instructions. So if a driver couldn't follow instructions, we knew that it'd be very difficult for them to be a courier on the platform, because often a courier has to be able to follow instructions and read things from customers saying do this and do that, and if you don't do that, then the delivery experience fails. And so what we did is we went through this process, we watched the video, we would approve it, it was all built in steps through the system, and when they get that approval email, it would actually have a link in that email and say, if you want to continue, click this link. What the link actually did is it actually dials the driver's phone and actually plays a pre-recorded message to the driver. It does two things. One, it allows us to identify whether the driver's phone number is actually active and real, and we've got the real number. Two, it allows us to see and explain to the driver what it's like to join the platform and what the process is once they're actually joined as a driver. That allows us to do two things. One was education, but also it allowed us to identify, could the driver spend 8 minutes listening to this video and listening to the voice played over the phone, and at the end of that video they had to press 1 or 2 to continue. They did that, then it allowed them to get to the next stage of filling out more information. And so it was purposely complicated. It meant the drivers had to follow a series of steps, they had to understand all the instructions, and they got to the end of that process. That might take them a day or two to do that. Then we knew that these were drivers that there was a much higher chance that likely they were going to perform a lot better. And interestingly enough, we had a number of complaints from drivers going through this process. They couldn't follow it, they couldn't understand it, and we were like, well, this is built by design and this is exactly what we wanted it to do. This one system has been fundamental for us being able to grow inside of Zoom2U. It has meant that we've saved a huge amount of money in onboarding of drivers. Where it would have taken a team of 20 or 30 to actually onboard those drivers, we've been able to maintain the same number of people onboarding the drivers as we have 2014 to what we have today. And today it's 1 or 2 people that sits there and actually goes through this onboarding process, but they're able to onboard drivers at scale, and as we go into a peak period during Christmas, we're able to onboard the number of drivers that we actually need. Spending that time and investing that effort in thinking about that problem in the early days and then looking at how you can actually automate it adds huge amounts of value, and years later, this time that we spent 2014-15 in building this system is still adding huge amounts of value to the business today. When you're thinking about solving and thinking about how you can actually automate a task, it takes a lot of time to spend building that automation process and thinking about it, but then you're going to get a huge return on investment if you do that really well into the future. So if you like this video and thought it's added value, please like it and subscribe to this channel.